Let me ask you a question. What was the first Warhammer model that you ever painted? Let me know down in the comments because I would love to know. Now, this video isn't going to go the way that I thought it was. You see, I had the idea of taking one of the first ever Warhammer models that I painted and then repainting it with all my extra skill and the new products that you can get today. And then this happened.
It's really simple. It's actually called the Miniature Glow Up Challenge. So all you've got to do is take one of your old paint jobs and repaint that miniature again as best you can now, and we're going to compare the two from when you first painted it to the one that you've just painted now.
Now, I can't begrudge Daz stealing what very little thunder that I had in the first place. He's a hobby hero of mine and does a fantastic job of encouraging participation in the hobby, as well as producing some amazingly inspirational paint jobs, not to mention the fantastic work that he does as part of the sculpting team at Games Workshop. Anyway, back to me, and more importantly, this little guy. So I know this is not exactly the finest example of Warhammer painting, and this takes you back, probably about 20 years. Now, I first got into Warhammer at 3rd edition, but it wasn't really until I went to uni that I got properly involved, and this was when you could buy probably 2 or 3 Cyper Scouts in a blister for a £5, if I'm remembering that correctly. Now my folks were recently having a clear out, and this was one of a couple that surfaced. Now, I vaguely remember thinking that I knew best and that a scout would, of course, be wearing dark green armour and camouflage, flawlessly executed in a time before shades and washes, I have to say. So, on that basis, I have no idea how to explain the bright red gun and shiny metallics either. So here's the challenge. I ordered the same model from eBay, primed it black. Could I replicate the same model and make it better with modern materials and my improved paint skill? Let's see. So here's the challenge. I ordered the same model from eBay and primed it black. Could I replicate the same scheme? Now, this was painted with the old paint system, so we're probably going to have to do some matching here. Now, I'll base most of it with Caliban green and a couple of nice thin layers that should do. Now, I haven't got a clue what colour those trousers are. Do you have any idea? I'm just going to go with Elysian green. That looks really, really garish. Definitely not perfect for any sort of camouflage, but it's the base colour we're going for. Now, whilst we're doing base colours, I figured I'd do the rest of them. I'm going to use some Steel Legion drab on the cloak draped across his backpack. And I don't know if red makes it shoot faster or make it deadlier, but that's the colour we're going for. I mean, back in this day and age of 40k, most weapons had red casing on them because it was just that bright, wonderful time. Some dark aluminium on the metal parts. I'm going to paint the face last, so I'll show you how to do that. But generally, we're getting to a place now where we've got some base coats down, we've got some colour, starting to give a bit of shape. Now, I threw some shade using dark tone for most of the model and strong tone for the cloak and trousers. These are both from the Army Painter Fanatic range, and I just prefer them to the Citadel washes because they've got a bit more pigment in them, so you get a lot more of a harsher effect, which I think is nice. Now, when I painted this model the first time, shades and washes, believe it or not, did not exist. In fact, this was even pre-foundation paints. You used to have inks, which I really didn't get on with, and the main reason for that is I didn't realise you have to thin them down with a little bit of water to help them flow, so they always went on a bit too thick for my liking. And in fact, I'm pretty sure I didn't thin any of the paint I put on this model. It may not even have been primed. I can't make any promises. So whilst I was waiting for all of that to dry, I had a little bit of a realisation. I wasn't really sure what I was trying to achieve with this mini. Was I actually trying to just replicate the same paint job? Or was I actually trying to make it look better at the same time? Because, that first one was pretty dodgy. And while I'm in that thinking space, I wanted to just let you all know that this is the first video that I have done since passing the 100,000 subscriber mark on YouTube. I am so grateful and thankful to you and for anyone who's ever liked, watched, commented, and of course subscribed to the channel. It really does mean so much to me. And when I first started this 5 years ago, that 5 years has flown. It's been a great journey. But when I did first start this channel, one of the main aims I had was to get to 100,000 subscribers. So thank you so much for helping me realise that goal. Now, whilst you might think the lifestyle of a YouTuber is all glamour and Lamborghinis, and for some it certainly is, that's very much not the case for me. When it comes to the channel, I do everything myself. That's coming with a video idea, building the model, painting the model, filming, editing, posting, whatever you can think of, I have to do it all myself. And I do all that whilst also working a full-time job. So I do my Monday to Friday, my 9 till 5, and then I'm in on the painting and editing train. And I don't say that for any sort of pity. I say that just to let you know, really, it's an insane privilege that I get to do that and also produce content, which I hope that you really enjoy. Whilst I mentioned that getting 100,000 subs was really, really important and a massive goal for me on the channel, I wanted to share my next big goal with you. And that is to actually make this my full-time job. Now, it might take me a little bit of time to get there, but it's absolutely my commitment to you that I'll produce more content more of the time. To steal a quote from someone, I just need that little bit of extra time, and obviously working full-time will help me do that. Like I said, it's not going to happen tomorrow, but I will get there. If you'd like to help me on this journey, then there are a few ways you can do it. The first way is absolutely free. You can watch this video all the way to the end. You can share it with your friends. You can like, you can comment, and you can share what the Painting Coach channel is all about. If you would like to support me financially, then you can do that using the affiliate links in the description to buy products that you're probably already going to buy anyway at no additional cost to you. And you can check out my Patreon where I do produce some exclusive content. I'm looking to add more and more all of the time. Now you can subscribe to that for as low as $3, but please only do that if you can afford to do it and don't feel any obligation to support me financially. A like, a share and a comment is more than enough. So that's enough about my highlights. Let's get back to that miniature and see about highlighting that. And yeah, which direction are we going to go? So to start the highlighting, I went back to that horrendously garishly green undersuit, and I started using Finalizing green just to build up some of that colour back, leaving the darker colours in the recesses. Now, if you've watched any of my standard videos, you know this is how I like to paint. This is how I like to build up some of the contrast. So this was a fairly easy and straightforward stage. And I then mixed in a little bit of all green camo to the Finalizing green, just so that step up in value wasn't too much. And as I was working my way through doing this, I was starting to think to myself, I'm probably not going to paint this as an exact replica of the original model, but I need to sort of find something that inspires me to carry on. Now, I've already mentioned that I wasn't 100% sure where this miniature was going. As I worked my way up through the highlights, using Creed Khaki as a final highlight to help make things pop, I was still really struggling to find where I was going to land with this. Was I going to replicate the scheme, or was I just going to try and make it look better using similar colours? I wasn't sure I was feeling it. So as I finished the pants, I moved on to the gun, and it's here that things started to click a little bit. And I kind of, in my mind, I thought, oh, can I paint in that bright, old school heavy metal style? So I thought, right, let's try that on the gun. And as I worked my way through highlighting it, I mean, if you don't know if you remember the old heavy metal Blood Angels, but they were kind of more orange than they were red. In fact, I think there used to be a Blood Angels red paint, which was actually orange. I'm not 100% sure on that back in the day. So I took some corn red to block in, leaving the darker colours in the recesses. And then I started to edge highlight using Evil Sun Scarlet. Again, standard way I like to highlight a dark red. I then took some Troll Slayer orange and started to highlight along those sharp edges. And this is when it started to come to me, and I started to feel what was happening. And I realised that I was actually having fun painting this miniature, something I haven't painted in a very long time. And I just thought, you know what? Throwing those shackles off, trying things, just carrying on with what you think feels right without worrying too much what it looked like. And that's why we've got a really nice bright orange gun. I finished that off with some Luganeth orange as the fine colour dot highlight. And whilst I doubt that is anywhere near as bright as what the classic heavy metal style was, I'm really happy with how it looks like and how punchy it is against the green of the model. So I think that's where we're going with this. We're going to focus on having fun, and I would encourage you to do the same thing. Get your paints out and just start painting. Having given myself the freedom to enjoy painting this, I found another thing happened. And that was the speed at which I painted it was much quicker. I wasn't worrying about how I was going to do things or how I was going to film it, or is it looking right? Is that heavy metal? Is it not heavy metal? Is it my style? I'm not even sure what my style is. But that freedom has really opened this up, and I'm really, really enjoying this. So I just took some Steel Legion drab to sort of paint over that tarp that he's got over his shoulders. And then I just mixed in some Carrick Stone to give me the bright highlight. Again, I'm working really, really fast here, and that's good for me in terms of how long it's taking me, but also helping my enjoyment. For all the black elements, I didn't want them to be too stark. Now, we've got a bright red weapon casing, and we've got some bright green trousers, so it's already quite bright. So with the black, I just took some darker greys. Now, I actually use my AK greys for this, things like dark grey, uniform grey. But if you haven't got AK and you want to replicate the same thing I did here, it's things like Eshin grey, Dawnstone. And essentially what I was looking to do was just highlight again the sharp edges and kind of think a little bit about where light might land on the model. It's not perfect. It's not a study in any sense of the imagination. It's just something that I'm enjoying that I think looks right. And a point I always like to make is if you put something on a bit too thickly, you can always go and paint over it and get those highlights nice and tight. To highlight the silver, I took some chrome from Vallejo Model Air, which I'm sure you all know is my favourite bright silver colour. And again, I used this in a very similar way to how I did the grey. I didn't catch edges per se, but I just catch the kind of top half of some of the models, because that really kind of gives you a nice bright metallic effect whilst keeping some in the shadows. So I just did that across all the silver bits I needed to. Now for the armour, I didn't really want to go down the route of having the Warp Lightning moot green look, which would make him look a little bit like Dark Angels, so if you were painting them that way. I wanted to go for something a little more desaturated. So I did that by taking some Screaming Skull and mixing a little bit of that into the Caliban green. Now, what I did is I spread this across my palette a bit, so I went from dark Caliban green to almost pure Screaming Skull by mixing together. And this gave me my transitions. So all I did was just started painting lighter colours, thinking about the shapes of the model. So for example, on the shoulder pads, these were a bit more circular in terms of how the highlights would look, whereas on the sharper edges, they were a little bit more towards those higher points, leaving shadows in the bottom. And again, this was one of those times where I just worked quite quickly across the model. I was using a lot of stippling, I was using a little bit of glazing, probably a little bit of wet blending as I worked through this as well. And I can only say, I don't think there was any particular skill in doing this. It was just a case of taking a lighter colour, applying it, dragging the brush along the model to where you want the lightest colour to be and see what that looked like. And then you can always stipple in another colour to help blend it, or if it's still wet, you can do it that way as well. And really, this was perhaps the best part for me, because I'd realised I was enjoying it, and this was just more freedom of painting and freedom of applying colours to a miniature. And, you know, even as I look at it now, it's not perfect in terms of how it's finished. I could make it perfect if I wanted to go back in and spend a lot more time doing it. But it's not about that. It's about the enjoyment, and I'm really happy with how it's popped out. And the desaturated green looks quite nice against that really garish green of the trousers, and of course that very bright red of the gun casing. Now, I tend to enjoy painting faces, but this one was, you can see the difference in the sculpt quality. Obviously, this was hand sculpted. It's a lot smaller than what you'd find on the minis you'd buy today, and there's a lot less detail on the face. So firstly, I based it with Bugman's Glow, and then that was just to kind of help apply the next few layers. So I took some Cadian Flesh Tone and then started to paint this all over the Bugman's Glow from the previous step. That's just to make that step up from the black undercoat to the nice bright skin colour easier. I then took some Kislev Flesh and started highlighting different parts as well, generally focusing on the brow, the cheekbones, the nose. I then carried on highlighting using Flayed One Flesh. This was the brightest highlight I put on the face. And then I took some Kislev Flesh and I thinned this down a bit with water, made sure I didn't have too much on my brush, and just used it to paint into some of those recesses and add some shadow back in so that the face wasn't all one colour. Now, the last thing to do was the lenses, and I thought I'd do this in that super modern way that I like to do them at the moment, and that is to base them white, and I used AK white for that. I then used contrast paints over them, so I used Striking Scorpion for the goggles, and then a little bit of Karandras green underneath to give me the dark colour, and I used Bal Red on the sniper scope. Cleaned my brush off and just wiped away a little bit of it to give me that white gleam. And there we are. That is my miniature glowed up, if that's the right syntax words, I'm not sure. I'm presenting it as part of Daz Latham's Miniature Glow Up Challenge in September. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for supporting. I really hope you like the difference in the miniature. Leave a like and a comment down below. Check out my other content. I'll see you next time.